The light in the room changes so slowly that we hardly notice the transition from afternoon to evening. We sit in a chair, perhaps holding a cup of tea, and there is a quiet sense that everything is exactly where it should be. It feels as though we have arranged this moment. We decided when to sit, which chair to choose, and how the warmth feels against our palms. It is a subtle, pervasive feeling, the sense that the immediate world is responding to our touch. We move a glass an inch to the left, and it stays there. We close a book, and the room remains silent. In these small, domestic spaces, the world feels manageable. We are the architects of this particular silence. It is a comfortable weight, this idea that our hands are the primary movers of our lives. We look around and see a landscape we have built, one small choice at a time, and for a moment, the boundaries of our influence seem clear and solid. There is a profound comfort in knowing what comes next. We reach for a light switch, and the room glows. We turn a key, and a door opens. This predictability acts as a soft blanket over the mind. It suggests that the world is a series of reliable mechanisms, and that we are the ones operating the levers. We find ourselves returning to the same spots, the same habits, because they offer a promise of continuity. When things happen as we expect them to, we feel safe. We feel seen by the universe in a way that is quiet and unremarkable. It is the absence of surprise that allows us to breathe deeply. We tell ourselves that because the floor held us yesterday, it will hold us today. We lean into the familiar textures of our lives, finding a strange kind of peace in the repetition of things that work exactly the way they are supposed to. Consider the small choices, the way we choose a path through a park, or the specific pen we use to write a note. These are tiny iterations of our will. They feel significant because they are ours. We might think that these choices are the foundation of everything else. If we can decide the color of a shirt or the time we eat, surely we are directing the flow of our existence. We observe ourselves making these micro decisions, and they build a narrative of agency. It is a gentle accumulation of I will and I prefer. We look at the path behind us and see a trail of intentionality. It is a quiet, steadying thought to believe that the direction of the day is determined by the tilt of our heads or the pace of our steps. We move through the world as if we are choosing the air we breathe, one small, deliberate breath at a time. We spend a great deal of time looking forward, mapping out the days to come. A calendar is a grid of reassurance. We fill the boxes with ink, and suddenly the future seems to take a physical shape. It is a way of talking ourselves out of the unknown. By naming the hour and the task, we feel we have already arrived there. It is a rehearsal of reality. We plan the route, we check the weather, we set the alarm. Each of these acts is a soft whisper to ourselves that we are prepared. Planning is not just about the logistics. It is about the feeling of being anchored. It creates a bridge from the present moment to a destination we haven't reached yet. Even if the ink is faint, the lines on the page provide a structure that makes the vastness of time feel a little more intimate, a little more within reach. Routines are the architecture of our sanity. The way we brush our teeth, the route we drive to work, the sequence of our evenings. These patterns create a rhythm that we recognize as our own. It is like a song we have learned by heart. In the repetition, there is a sense of mastery. We don't have to think, we simply flow. This flow suggests that we have mastered the environment around us. We move through the kitchen in the dark, knowing exactly where the edge of the counter is. We trust the routine to carry us through the day, as if the habit itself is a form of protection. It is a structure we build to keep the chaos at a distance. As long as the coffee drips at the same time and the mail arrives at the door, the world feels like a place that follows the rules we have come to expect. We are often told that effort is the currency of outcome. If we work harder, if we try more intensely, we can bend the world to our desires. It is a deeply held belief, the idea that our energy is directly proportional to our results. We pour ourselves into tasks, believing that our sheer will is a guarantee. It is a sturdy thought, one that gives us a reason to keep moving. We look at a garden we've weeded or a project we've finished and see the physical manifestation of our labor. It reinforces the idea that we are the cause and the world is the effect. We want to believe that the harder we grip the wheel, the more certain the direction. It is a narrative of merit, a story where the ending is written by the sweat of the brow. We find a sense of justice in this, a quiet assurance that our input dictates the output. And then, there are the moments when the plans simply do not unfold. The road is closed, the phone doesn't ring, the weather turns. It is a quiet realization, a small crack in the glass. We look at our schedules and realize they have become artifacts of a future that isn't happening. There is no loud crash, usually, just a silence where an event was supposed to be. We find ourselves standing in the middle of a day that doesn't match the one we imagined. It feels strange, like wearing a coat that no longer fits. We observe the gap between what we intended and what is actually occurring. It's not necessarily a tragedy, but a shift, a pause. We wait for the feeling of control to return, looking for a new handle to grab onto, while the clock continues its steady, indifferent ticking. Interruptions arrive without knocking. A sudden illness, a missed flight, a power outage in the middle of a storm. These moments are the friction in the smooth machinery of our lives. They remind us that our routines are guests in a larger house. When the lights go out, the familiar room becomes a mystery again. We have to feel our way along the walls. These interruptions break the spell of our own importance. We realize that the world has its own schedule, its own sudden shifts in mood. We are forced to stop, to wait, to look at the ceiling. In the stillness of an interrupted plan, we might notice the sound of the wind or the way the shadows stretch across the floor, things we were too busy to see when we thought we were in charge of the hour. Sometimes, a life changes because of a 3-second delay, a red light that lasted a moment longer, or a key that was misplaced for a heartbeat. These tiny fragments of time alter the trajectory of years. We look back and see the points where the path diverged, often for reasons that had nothing to do with our intentions. It is a staggering thought that the most significant chapters of our lives might be written by the smallest, most random occurrences. We like to think we are steering the ship, but perhaps we are simply reacting to the currents. A moment's hesitation, a chance glance out a window, these are the invisible hinges upon which our history turns. We can plan the journey, but we cannot plan the moments that redefine the journey itself. A chance encounter on a street corner, a conversation with a stranger that leads somewhere unexpected. These are the arrivals we could never have scheduled. We move through our lives meeting people by the thousands, and yet certain timings feel like a strange kind of clockwork. Two paths cross at a specific coordinate in time and space. We might call it luck, or we might call it fate, but what it truly is a lack of control. We did not choose the other person's arrival. We did not orchestrate the meeting. We simply happened to be there. These encounters remind us that we are part of a vast, moving tapestry where every thread is being pulled by hands we cannot see. We are participants in a story we are only partially writing. There is a difference between control and influence. We can influence the growth of a plant by giving it water and light, but we cannot control the way its cells divide or the exact curve of its leaves. We influence our health, our relationships, our work, but the final shape of these things remains just beyond our grasp. We are like gardeners who can prepare the soil but cannot command the rain. It is a subtle distinction, but an important one. Influence is a gentle hand on the shoulder. Control is a grip on the wrist. When we mistake influence for control, we become frustrated by the world's refusal to obey. But when we see our role as one of influence, the pressure begins to lift. We do our part, and then we watch to see what the world does with it. Uncertainty is often seen as a shadow, something to be avoided or illuminated. But it is the natural state of things. We live in the not knowing. Every time we step out the door, we are entering a space where anything could happen. Usually, we ignore this. We pretend the world is a known quantity. But in the quiet hours, the uncertainty becomes more visible. It is the vast space between what we know now and what will happen tomorrow. It isn't necessarily a threat. It is simply the air we breathe. We don't know the ending of the book we are currently living. We don't know the weather of next month. There is a strange kind of freedom in this, if we look at it closely. If nothing is certain, then everything is possible. The lack of a map means the landscape is still ours to discover. We all have different ways of standing in the wind of the unpredictable. Some of us tighten our grip, trying to hold on to the things that feel solid. Others lean back, letting the force move them. We observe these reactions in ourselves, the tension in the jaw when a plan changes, or the sudden nervous laughter. Some people find comfort in data and numbers, trying to predict the unpredictable. Others find it in ritual or silence. There is no right way to face a world that refuses to be managed. We are all just trying to find our footing on shifting ground. We watch each other, seeing the different masks we wear to hide our surprise. It is a shared human experience, this quiet navigation of a world that doesn't always provide a handrail. There is a subtle art in letting go without giving up. It is like floating in water. You aren't swimming, you aren't fighting the current, but you aren't sinking either. You are simply present within the movement. It is a state of active waiting. We stop trying to force the door open and instead wait to see if the latch turns. This isn't passivity. It's a different kind of engagement. It's recognizing that our strength has a limit and that there is a point where our effort ends and the world begins. When we stop pushing, we might feel a strange lightness. The energy we spent on control is suddenly returned to us. We stand with open hands, not because we have lost everything, but because we are ready to receive whatever comes next. Control is often a story we tell ourselves to make the world feel smaller and kinder. We narrate our lives as a series of successes and failures based on our own actions. We say, "I did this, so that happened." It is a narrative of cause and effect that keeps the chaos at bay. But if we look closer, the story is full of holes. There are events we claim as our own that were actually gifts of timing. There are failures we take personally that were simply the result of a system breaking down. We are the editors of our own experience, smoothing out the jagged edges of luck and coincidence. We build this internal myth of the self-made life because the alternative that we are part of a giant, unmanageable storm is much harder to carry. Our culture values the go-getter, the person who takes charge, the one who makes things happen. We are taught that mastery of our environment is the ultimate goal. Success is often measured by how much of the world we have successfully organized around ourselves. But this creates a heavy burden. If we are responsible for our successes, we must also be solely responsible for our stagnations. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, forgetting that the world was turning long before we arrived. We look at the images of controlled lives, perfect homes, perfect schedules, and we feel a sense of inadequacy. But these are just images. Behind the curtain, everyone is dealing with the same wind, the same rain, and the same fundamental lack of a steering wheel. Responsibility is a heavy cloak. When we believe we are in total control, every setback feels like a personal flaw. We look at the things that went wrong, and we search for the moment we failed to hold on tight enough. This leads to a quiet, constant anxiety. The fear that if we look away for a second, everything will unravel. We become the sentinels of our own lives, always on guard. But what if the unraveling isn't our fault? What if the things that fall apart were always going to fall apart, regardless of our grip? There is a relief in acknowledging our limitations. It doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop blaming ourselves for the tide coming in. We are just people, standing on a beach, doing our best to keep our shoes dry. There is a moment, sometimes, when surrender feels like the only logical response. Not a surrender of defeat, but a surrender of exhaustion. We simply stop fighting the way things are. In that moment, a strange peace often descends. It is the relief of a weight being put down. We realize that the world didn't end when we stopped trying to manage it. The sun still rose. The heart still beat. The people around us still moved in their own orbits. This surrender is a homecoming. It is returning to our actual size, not the giants we pretend to be in our plans, but the small, resilient beings we actually are. We sit in the center of our lives and let the world happen around us, and for a few minutes, the silence is enough. We live within processes we cannot see: the turning of the seasons, the movement of the tides, the slow healing of a wound. These things happen without our permission and without our help. There is a deep, underlying intelligence to the world that doesn't require our supervision. We trust our lungs to breathe while we sleep. We trust the trees to grow. This trust is a form of letting go. We are participating in a system that is far older and more complex than our intentions. When we acknowledge these invisible processes, our own efforts seem smaller, but also more sacred. We are part of a larger unfolding. We don't have to understand the whole machine to appreciate the way it carries us along. We can simply exist within the flow, trusting the process to continue. Living without guarantees is a brave act. We wake up every morning and step into a day that has no signed contract. We invest our time, our love, and our energy into things that might not last. This is the human condition. We build houses on ground that shifts. We make promises for a future we cannot see. There is a vulnerability in this that is both frightening and beautiful. We are acting in spite of the uncertainty. We find meaning not in the certainty of the outcome, but in the sincerity of the attempt. We don't need a guarantee to find the day worth living. We find steadiness in the small things: the taste of a meal, the sound of a voice, the feeling of a cool breeze. These are the things that are real, right now, regardless of what happens next. There is a quiet acceptance that comes with recognizing our limits. It's like reaching the edge of a forest and seeing the ocean. We can't walk on the water. We can only stand on the shore. This boundary isn't a wall. It's a definition. It tells us where we end, and the rest of the universe begins. Accepting our limits allows us to focus on the space we actually inhabit. We stop trying to be everywhere and do everything. We become more present in the small circle of our influence. This acceptance is a form of grace. It allows us to be tired. It allows us to be unsure. It allows us to be human, We look at our hands and see they are small, and instead of feeling weak, we feel a strange kind of strength in our own modest proportions. Steadiness doesn't have to come from control. It can come from a different kind of balance. Think of a bird on a branch. It doesn't control the wind, and it doesn't control the strength of the wood, but it stays balanced through a constant, tiny adjustment. This is how we find our way. We are constantly adjusting to the shifts in our environment. We find our center not by making the world stand still, but by moving with it. This steadiness is internal. It is the ability to remain yourself even when the plans change. It is a quiet confidence that we can handle the not knowing. We find our footing over and over again, one step at a time, trusting that we have the balance to stay upright, even when the ground is uneven. Some of the most meaningful moments in a life are the ones that could never have been planned. A sudden laugh that breaks attention, an unexpected view at the end of a wrong turn, a moment of connection with someone we barely know. These are the gifts of the unplanned. They arrive like stowaways in our schedules. If we were in total control, we might have missed them. We would have stayed on the path, eyes on the goal, ignoring the side roads where the magic lives. These moments remind us that the world is more generous than our plans. It has surprises for us that are better than anything we could have invented. We look back and realize that the highlights of our story are often the parts where we lost our way. Control is a temporary structure. It is a scaffold we build so we can work on the building. Sometimes we forget that the scaffold isn't the building itself. We cling to the rules, the schedules, and the habits as if they are the substance of our lives, but they are just the tools. The real life is the messy, unpredictable, beautiful thing happening inside the structure. It's the feeling of being alive, which has no schedule. We can use our structures to give us a sense of order, but we must be ready to take them down when the wind blows. We live in the tension between the order we create and the chaos that created us. It is a delicate dance, a constant negotiation between the grip and the release. So we sit here, in the quiet of the night, and we look at the maps we've drawn. They are good maps, but they are not the territory. The territory is vast and dark and full of things we haven't seen yet. We think about the things we've lost and the things we've found, and we realize that the line between them is thinner than we thought. Is it enough to just be here? Without a guarantee, without a certain outcome, without the illusion of a steady hand at the wheel, the clock ticks, the house settles, and the world continues its long, slow turn into tomorrow. We don't have to have the answers tonight. Maybe the feeling of not being in control is just another way of saying we are finally, truly